What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Back here over on the Ultimate Down Ninja channel on what if Deku was transported to Danmachi Part 6 Season 2. Now, to explain this to anyone who is brand new with the series, of course, Deku was transported to Danmachi and is currently in a relationship with Eyes, just to catch up any of my newer viewers that just haven't seen any of my other parts and jump straight in at this one. So Deku woke up the next morning feeling kind of refreshed. It was a pretty good day, or at least he figured it was going to be a good day. He decided to go into the dungeon a little bit earlier, and it was a pretty pleasant experience. Not his best, but not his worst, of course. There have been times that it was way worse than now, and today was a pretty decent one. So, he didn't feel anything about it at all. Of course, Izuku was kind of just chilling after entering the dungeon. He could easily clear about the first 25 floors pretty relatively easily. So, he wasn't really worrying that much. Eventually, while Izuku was just walking past, he noticed something oddly strange. Some people were chasing after a girl. Now, Izuku didn't know who this girl was, but he decided to try to help out. This girl seemed to be blue-skinned and blue hair. Izuku wasn't too unused with people of weird skin tones and colors. Quirks were obviously a common thing in his world, so having a weird skin tone wasn't unusual by any sense of the word. Izuku then decided to help out the girl. She seemed to look more akin to a monster, which Izuku then realized was pretty much a Zeno. Izuku was very confused because he knew he had to kill Zenos, but this girl seemed to be rather innocent and not really that aggressive at all. Eventually, while talking, Izuku got her to safety, and after getting her to safety, they started discussing with each other. He ended up finding out that this girl's name was Weenie, or Whiny. And Izuku was oddly confused. She ended up discussing things about how she remembered the surface world and how it looked so beautiful, but she could never see it behind, well, the dungeon walls. This saddened Izuku until he eventually figured out that these people that were known as, well, bad guys weren't really all that bad. They were just what appears to be humans that seem to be reincarnated or transformed into creatures in the dungeon. This was a very confusing revelation to Izuku because it meant a lot of things that he knew of was a lie. Of course, he couldn't just mindlessly kill people. That goes against his very nature as a whole. So Izuku started to devise a plan to find a way to, well, try to fix the situation as it was. Eventually, he ended up deciding on taking Weenie out of the area to get her into a more safer location, to say, of course. Eventually, he took her to a location that was relatively harmless. Nothing going on. So then Izuku decided after that he would bring her outside the dungeon. This, of course, had some issues, but it's not like many of the issues he wasn't willing to deal with. This was obviously some sort of human that was transformed, so he didn't have any issues with trying to fix it or trying to save someone. Monsters were a different story, but this was a living human. Nothing that he can just get over. Even though, yes, it did have a party that appeared to be very similar to a monster in origin, Izuku knew that this most likely was nothing more than just the outward appearance of the person, no. If they had a soul, then there would be no reason for them to be persecuted, just because they were born inside the dungeon. Izuku then decided, after taking her out, to ask Loki more information about Xenos as a whole, seeing how his information that he knew about it was very scarce and little. Eventually, after Izuku made it to the Twilight Manor, he ended up walking in. This confused Loki. Izuku was almost never around, so it was quite a treat to see him. "Oh, what's up, Izuku? You're never around," Loki said in a precarious yet cheeky manner. Izuku laughed back with kind of a stale laughter. He doesn't know how to really talk with his goddess in any way, shape, or form. He usually leaves that to Aiz. Eventually, Loki then asked Izuku what he was doing here. What was he doing here? This caused Izuku to state, well, he was trying to find out more information about Xenos. He has heard of them, but he doesn't really know what they are or how they came into being. This caused Loki to squint her eyes. She could tell when someone was bullshitting her, and Izuku was a case of someone bullshitting her. So it didn't take her long to end up pushing Izuku until she realized that he had brought a Xeno outside of the area, outside the dungeon, into the open world. Loki knew Izuku wasn't 100% at fault for this because he didn't know, but she decided to tell him anyway. Izuku's Xenos are known as a dangerous species for a reason. They can manipulate humans by just making them think that they are human. Are you sure about this? And Izuku told her and said, well, Loki, with all due respect, I'm a hero before I'm any adventurer of any kind. If it has sentience, then it knows what it's doing. That makes it a requirement for me to help out protecting and keeping it safe. Loki sighed at this, understanding that she wasn't going to get Izuku to budge on this subject with any worth of contemplating or discussion. So Loki just decided it would be better if Izuku just ran his course with it. She sighed one more time before eventually ended up stating, "Through my informational network, I've heard that the Hermes Familia has some sort of involvement with Xenos. The best place to talk about Xenos would be there. Here you go. Here's your information to that fool. But no matter what you do, don't get too enticed with his character. He's a very misleading and tricky god to deal with. So be careful with your understanding. Izuku, your naivety has brought me enough issues. I'd rather not have to deal with all of the Hermes Familias as well." Izuku understood that his goddess was mainly joking around and not trying to actually talk to him in a belligerent manner. But Izuku still scratched the back of his head with an apologetic smile on his face. He knew he was probably more troubled than he was worth at times, but Izuku was grateful to have Loki as his god because she honestly cared for him. Eventually, Izuku kept walking on, and before continuing to go and leave, Loki said one more thing, and don't tell this to Aiz. Aiz has an issue with certain people, and monsters are one of the major ones, and judging by the description I heard, it seems like this monster you found actually seems to be akin to a mixture in between a dragon and human, which, as you know, or at least I assume you know, Aiz isn't really fond of those types of monsters. Izuku, knowing that she was all correct, agreed with Loki, knowing that he couldn't tell Aiz about the current situation, or Eyes would probably kill Whiny and probably go ape shit on him for keeping her a secret. And Izuku was not in the mood for it today. Izuku ended up leaving the area with a smile on his face. He was excited to meet someone new. He hadn't met someone new in a long while. So Izuku was pretty excited. He ended up walking and almost made it directly into the room. He ended up walking up to it and put his hand on this door, and that's where we're going to leave it off, guys. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, goodbye.